The laws of the universe are always in effect. You may not get a ticket or smash your car for disobeying the laws, but there are always consequences. Like the law of gravity, if you jump off a building, you fall. Even if you didn't know the law of gravity exists, when you jump, you fall. So it is with the universal laws. It makes sense to arm yourself with the knowledge of these laws that will lead you to a happier, more serene life. Once you fully understand how they work, you will see that you are 100% responsible for your life. That's right, you are the creator of your life. If you don't like the movie that's playing, it's time to change the channel.
Brad Warner, in his book Sit Down and Shut Up, puts it this way. It's amazing how ignorant human beings can be about the way we are fully responsible for what happens to us. It's hard to accept the idea that you're responsible for the seemingly random circumstances of your life, but just try it sometime. Try accepting full responsibility for everything in your life, including seemingly random events you couldn't possibly have had any control over. Don't worry about how you are responsible for these things. It doesn't matter. Just accept that you are responsible and see what happens. Do it for a little while and you'll discover there's a surprising kind of power in looking at your life that way.
Knowing that you live in a universe of law and order, and realizing that nothing can come to us that we do not deserve, we learn to substitute faith for fear, hope for worry, love for hate, and so forth. It's been said that a great majority of diseases among human beings are caused by the violation of the laws which govern the body, mind, and soul. But we can bring our lives into harmony with the laws and enjoy great happiness, more abundant health, and prosperity. Each of us experiences obstacles, problems, difficulties, and disappointments, challenges that we must meet. Either we must conquer them through elimination or adaptation, or else we become their victims and are subdued.
Worry is responsible for more disease than all the germs that exist on the face of the earth. Almost everyone suffers from it in some form or another. Few of us ever realize just what harm we do when we allow our minds to indulge in this most destructive emotion. Worry, like fear, will disorganize the whole being, body, mind, and soul. Most people who are ill are the victims of worry. Even if their illness is not a direct outcome of worry, this destructive force is still associated with the condition in some form or degree. Findings show that not only do physical conditions create worry, but that worry itself creates bodily sickness, high blood pressure, heart failure, all phases of serious anxiety. Loss of appetite and weight often accompany prolonged worrying.
Disease and health, like circumstances, are rooted in thought, says as a man thinketh. Sickly thoughts will express themselves through a sickly body. Thoughts of fear have been known to kill a man as speedily as a bullet, and they are continually killing thousands of people just as surely, though less rapidly. The people who live in fear of disease are the people who get it. Change of diet will not help a man who will not change his thoughts. When a man makes his thoughts pure, he no longer desires impure food. As a physically weak man can make himself strong by careful and patient training, so the man of weak thoughts can make them strong by exercising himself in right thinking.
One of the keys to a healthy life is to eliminate the negative. Not only worry, but fear, hate, impatience, and all other negative traits. It takes time and awareness, but we can replace those feelings and emotions with their opposite. Faith is a great requirement in healing. Concentrate and believe in desired result. Imagine the result. See it as actually taking place. In The Seat of the Soul, Gary Zukav says, when you choose to respond to life's difficulties with compassion and love instead of fear and doubt, you create a heaven on earth. You bring the aspects of a more balanced and harmonious level of reality into physical being. If you attend to the negative aspects of life, choosing to focus your attention on the weaknesses of others, on their faults and shortcomings, you draw to yourself the lower frequency energy currents of disdain, anger, and hatred. You create obstacles to your loving. If you choose to focus your attention on the strengths of others, on the virtues of others, you run through your system the higher frequency currents of appreciation, acceptance, and love. When you're compassionate with yourself and others, your world becomes compassionate.
Everything is energy and is always changing from something that was to something that is. Work with mental and spiritual energy as a potter works with clay. You can change illness to health, failure to success, pain to pleasure, in short, negative energy to positive energy. Just like the law of gravity, the laws of the universe affect your life whether you are aware of them or not. Law is inescapable. Let's talk about the law of vibration, also known as the law of attraction. In a nutshell, what you think is what you feel is what you vibrate, and what you vibrate is what you attract.
You're like a transmitter offering a signal, and the entire universe responds. When you understand that, then you recognize that nothing happens outside of your creative control. Nothing happens by chance or by circumstance. Everything is happening, or everything happening is caused by our feeling and thinking. Everything is first created in our thoughts. When you realize that you created your trouble, you'll see that you can create anything you desire and can use this realization to create only good things. On the mental and spiritual planes, you give off positive and negative vibrations and are constantly being exposed to the vibrations of others.
Think, talk, and act. What is it that you want? Health, abundance? Once you know, begin to think, talk, and act what it is you want. If you're looking for financial abundance, don't talk about lack and how broke you are. Look at the areas where you are abundant. Give gratitude for what you do have. If you want health, don't sit around talking about your ailments, aches, and pains. Healthy people aren't talking disease. These days there are walks for every kind of disease, some of them lasting for 3 days. While the intention is for the search for a cure, there's a lot of focus put on the disease itself along with the survivors and their stories. In addition, it's always called a war or battle against whatever it is that you're marching for, which means resistance, and that results in being out of harmony with your source energy. That's the reason why Mother Teresa, when asked if she wanted to march in an anti-war demonstration, said, "No, but let me know when you do have a walk for peace." The point is, when you say yes to something, you include something that you do want in your experience. And when you say no, you include something that you don't want in your experience. When you're in harmony and have a thought, every atom in the universe moves to fulfill your thought. When you resist what is, you disconnect yourself from spirit energy. When you lose that connection, you start to experience things like illness. Friction and dis-ease are created in life by pushing against what you don't like. Choose what you do want and let others choose what they want.
Here's something else to keep in mind as to enlist in the war against your cause. In an article by Philip Day, he states, "Wars are only profitable while you're fighting them, not when you've won them." That's right. Welcome to the not-so-enchanted forest of baleful scientific endeavor. Cancer, a $200 billion a year industry. There are more people today making a living out of cancer than are dying from it. From an economic point of view alone, one professor confided, why would anyone ever want to cure cancer? Millions would have to retrain. Pretty powerful, huh?
It is. And very few people even think about that. Disease, big business. Keeping the law of vibration in mind, remember that thoughts are things. If you begin to think about a headache, a cold, muscular pain, or any disease, then you've started brain cells associated with these things to vibrate abnormally. And these brain cells throw out vibrations accordingly. Understanding this law, you'll be careful to think positive thoughts. Negative vibrations are like bullets, only more deadly. Bullets affect the body. Vibrations affect the soul.
Whatever it is you're feeling is a perfect reflection of what is in the process of becoming. Keep in mind that asking for something, as in "I want," keeps you in a state of wanting. To grant your desire, the universe leaves you in a state of wanting. Instead of asking for what you want, just give thanks in advance, as if you already had whatever it is you would have asked for. Your action has nothing to do with your abundance. Your abundance is a response to your vibration.
Here's a quote from Dr. Fleet's book, Rays of the Dawn. "To an extent greater than you have ever dreamed, you get from life exactly what you expect innately. Your subconscious power arranges your affairs and draws to you exactly those things and conditions which you have thought about and visualized in your conscious thinking. What you are now, your position in life, is the result of past thought. There is no such thing as chance. You have visualized a certain mode of life and thought about it to such an extent that you have directed your God-given power to manifest for you. The great innate power does not think. If you consciously direct this innate power properly, you can change your whole life for the better."
There's no such thing as chance. That's a tough one for a lot of people to believe. For one thing, We are all 100% responsible for our lives. No luck, no chance, no circumstance, no putting the blame on something or somebody else. The soul originates and creates an idea or image. Spirit goes to work manifesting your image. The result is your body and your environment. You ask, why would I create dis-ease in my life? Well, you didn't do it consciously. It was from your subconscious. The key is awareness and putting your focus on what you want, not letting your thoughts go on autopilot and thinking about your Aunt Millie and her disease. If you have a loved one who's ill, the best thing you can do is picture them healthy and the way you want them to be, vibrant, energetic, healthy things like that.
We all experience a wandering mind, so it does take practice to develop your power of concentration. Here's an exercise to help. Take a plain piece of white paper and prop it up on a table in a quiet room, and then attempt to clear your mind of all thought as you look at the paper. Don't allow any thoughts to enter your mind. How long did you concentrate? Average is only a couple of seconds. But do this exercise over and over and you'll see that you can develop your ability to concentrate. Try to work your way up to 30 seconds. Then you'll be in a position to direct spirit by holding your image for 30 seconds. Learn to control your mind, allowing only positive, desirable thoughts. If you catch yourself having undesirable thoughts, have something you say to yourself, either out loud or to yourself, such as cut, cancel, delete, to stop and get rid of the negative thoughts. Sometimes you might really have to question, how did I attract this, whatever this is, into my life? It may just be a part of evolution.
The law of cause and effect is often referred to as karma. As you choose, so shall you reap. Choose the positive mental states such as charity, courage, love, and compassion, and you align yourself with spirit. Vibrate on the constructive side of life and reap a life and an environment where these traits will be in evidence. Again, from Brad Warner's book, Sit Down and Shut Up, the human mind is simply incapable of factoring in everything that needs to be taken into account in order to truly comprehend the cause and effect relationships we experience. But that doesn't mean that things happen at random. It just means that what we call cause and effect and real cause and effect are two different things. Actually, your whole existence is the working through of cause and effect. Now, have you heard the story about Elise Sparky Bridges?
It's a good one.
Yeah, a teacher in New York honored each of her students, letting each of them know individually how they made a difference to her and to the class. And then she gave them a blue ribbon that said, "Who I am makes a difference." As a class project, then she gave each student 3 blue ribbons to pass along to others they felt deserved them. One boy honored a junior executive who's helping him in his career planning. He put a blue ribbon on the man's shirt and then gave him the other 2 blue ribbons to pass along. The junior executive chose his boss, a bit of a grumpy fellow, to honor with a ribbon. Also, the boss was given the last blue ribbon to pass along. When the boss got home, he told his 14-year-old son about the "Who You Are Makes a Difference" ribbon he'd received. Then gave his son a blue ribbon, letting the boy know how important he was in his father's life. The boy broke down in tears, telling his dad he had planned to commit suicide that night and had just finished writing a note to his parents. What a tremendous effect this school project had on the lives of at least 2 people.
Wow, what a great story with so many lessons in that. Let's talk a little bit about the law of relativity. Besides the situation being part of evolution, there usually is a bright side to what we would call negative. For example, I was in a life-threatening situation after being bit by a rattlesnake, and I kept asking myself, how did I attract this into my life? It was a nightmare. I spent 15 days in the hospital and 5 to 6 weeks recovering and learning to walk again after being temporarily paralyzed. One of the lessons I learned was patience. I continually asked for it and was put in a position where I had no choice but to be patient. Healing would take time. I also learned dependence. There were a lot of people helping me in those first few weeks. But again, I kept asking how I attracted this situation. Was it a step backwards? So I asked one of my teachers. He said, it's not about the snake bite, it's about the experience and what comes from it. You never know if something's good or bad until God's done with it, and He's never done. The soul evolves, the divinity within makes better choices based on every experience. This adds to the evolution of consciousness. Others are aided and abetted from one another's growth. Is there proof? No, this is where faith comes in. Looking back at negative, painful times, one can see with pleasure how much the soul has grown and evolved. The soul now makes choices in harmony with the divine. Look at the ideals that soul would embrace and become aware of because of the event, shifting from the essence of the body to the essence of the soul. gathering greater ideals, like a rebirth. The soul chooses and selects greater levels of expression.
Charles Haanel wrote in the Master Key System, "Nothing can reach us except what is necessary for our growth. All conditions and experiences come to us for our benefit. Difficulties and obstacles will continue to come only until we absorb their wisdom and gather from them the essentials for further growth." And this from Dr. Thurman Fleet's book, Rays of the Dawn. Nothing happens by chance. All is according to a divine plan. That which causes an individual despair has been sent so that the individual may overcome the obstacle and advance upward in the eternal progression of life. Everything is relative. All things, thoughts, and acts are dual. There's no good, no evil, except in its relation to something else. All takes on its qualifications only by comparison.
You might be asking, if a person murders another person, we would consider that evil, not in relation to anything. We would just see it as plain evil. I don't need to compare it to anything else. Well, fourth dimensionally, there is no good or evil. Man created good and bad. But even on the third dimension, we can look at something like murder, and some might say it's good, some might say it's bad. A man was married and his father-in-law treated him horribly. When the father-in-law died, his daughter thought it was a bad and sad situation. Her husband, on the other hand, thought it was good. On a much bigger scale, what about Hitler? As mentioned a few minutes ago, you never know if something's good or bad until God's done with it, and He's never done. Something of that scope continues to affect lives way after the fact and is part of evolution. What was the soul's purpose in dying in the Holocaust? Remember that we are not the body. And the singer Adele went through a painful breakup. On the Grammys, after winning several awards, she said something to the effect of having had a very productive breakup with all the Grammys she'd won from some of the breakup songs she'd written. Law of relativity states everything is relative. There is no good in itself, for that which we conceive of as being good can at the same time be evil. There is no evil, for it can also be good. The same is true of the opposites such as big, little, hard, soft, faith, fear, love, hate, hope, and worry, and so on. So it is with everything in the universe. Everything, every thought, every act must have its opposite, and law of relativity governs it all.
Have you ever heard the story about Sai Wong, the man who raised horses for a living? One day he lost a horse and his neighbor felt sorry for him, but Sai Wong didn't care about the horse because he thought it wasn't a bad thing to lose a horse. After a while, the horse returned with another beautiful horse, and the neighbor congratulated him on his good luck. But Sai Wong said he didn't know if it was a good or bad thing to have this new horse. His son liked the new horse a lot and often took it riding. One day, though, his son fell off the horse and broke his leg. And again, his neighbor felt sorry for him, but Sai Wong said it might not be a bad thing. He would have to see. Soon war broke out because of his broken leg. His son couldn't go off to the war, unlike the other young men in the area. In a battle, most of the young men died. Man's ignorance of this natural law is responsible for the enslavement of his soul. Once you fully understand the laws of the universe, you become master of your fate. You can then consciously apply these laws and exercise control over forces of the lower world. The soul, unaware of the law of relativity, is enslaved to the opposites. Man assumed that things were in themselves either good or evil. In truth, there's neither good nor evil. Only in the degree that things are related to other things are they good or evil.
And although we try to insulate ourselves from these negative laws of the mind, we often find we are a slave to them. We express ourselves in the negative, we have no peace. Man comes into contact with the law of opposites, which are all relative, but due to a lack of understanding of this law, he does not know how to adapt himself. Our reasoning power is increased, enabling us to learn to adapt ourselves to and conquer the evil aspect of physical things such as snow, ice, rain, hunger, and the wild beasts. Well, so too can we enlarge our understanding so that we may also adapt ourselves to the evil of the mind by replacing the negative with the positive. When we understand the law of rhythm, vibration, cause and effect, polarity, and gender, we will no longer be enslaved by the opposites. With understanding comes adaptation. Just as we have done with the cold, heat, lightning, and rain, although we must always live among the opposites, we will not be seriously affected by them.
There are people who allow themselves to be tormented by the opposites. There was a lady who hated the rain. Due to circumstances, she was forced to live in an area where it rained for several months out of the year. Rainy days made her gloomy, despondent, moody, and unhappy, miserable physically and mentally. The dampness contracted her muscles, caused her bones to ache, her clothes to mildew. Windows and doors were difficult to open and close. Steps and sidewalks wet and slippery. She couldn't hang clothes outside to dry. Rainy days meant confinement. No appetite, no interest, no pleasure, just misery. Everything was negative. She couldn't see the lush vegetation, beautiful flowers, swollen streams, green countryside. Prosperity of the rain brought the rancher, the farmer, and others. Her negative frame of mind made her ill. Finally, the doctor advised the husband to transfer his business to a drier climate for the sake of his wife's health. And after the couple lived in a new area for some time, a terrible drought came. No rain for a year. Trees, shrubs, flowers dried up, countryside became barren, fruit would not mature, crops were lost, animals dying of thirst. Rivers dried up, desolate scene, one of desperation. Everyone prayed for rain, even the lady who hated the rain. But, said her husband, you did not like the rain. It made you unhappy, miserable, ill, and I was forced to move my business to a less desirable locality just to please you. You wanted to get away from the rain because you saw it as evil. And yes, she said, in my ignorance I did say it was bad, but I've learned that we must have the rain. It's no longer evil, it's absolutely necessary. And that which I considered bad would now be the greatest blessing. And the sunshine, which was good, has now become bad. It's destroying everything. I didn't understand as my faulty reasoning had led me astray. Now I can see why we must have both the sunshine and the rain. Neither is good nor bad, but only by comparison.
Yes, many do not understand the organization of the universe, of the meaning of life, that Spirit is directing the universe according to a plan, and that everything is designed for a purpose. They have their lists of good and evil, and if they had their power, they'd eliminate the evil. They do not understand that Source Energy, in His divine wisdom, has created everything for a purpose, and that it is neither good nor evil, only in relation to other things. By understanding the laws, you learn to adapt, and by adapting, peace is gained.
Realize that you are living in a universe of law and order, and that the divine rules it all. Cease trying to change Spirit's world. Direct your own life, but be not too much disturbed by that which appears evil, for it is also good. It all has meaning. Evil must apparently come to the lives of people so that they may learn a much-needed lesson and thereby advance on the path of attainment.
So often we hear stories in the news of people abusing other people or killing one another. When someone's hurt bodily, we feel sadness. We feel pain when someone or we ourselves are hurt mentally or physically. It is soul growth. The soul is never harmed. Feeling bad for someone only adds to the negative vibration. Many individuals owe their successes and triumphs to tremendous difficulties, and some of our greatest contributions to life have been the outcome of the pressure of suffering. That thought of a thing is a vibrational frequency. And when you attach emotion to it, you start to get other circumstances and events that give the same emotion as to what you are focusing on. No matter what happens in your life, there's no such thing as something bad. It's just a different experience you've created. Look at the emotion, and if you like it, fine. If you don't, look at it and then turn your back on it. It serves a purpose. It lets you know what you do want. So many people, though, keep the focus on what they don't want. Remember, you get what you think about most of the time.
Using this together with the law of relativity, how do you view things such as success or failure? Thomas Edison failed 10,000 times trying to create the light bulb. But if you asked him about failing 10,000 times trying to create the light bulb, he would say, no, I didn't. I successfully found 10,000 ways it would not work. He understood that every time he found a way it wouldn't work, he was ultimately getting closer to success. What you might call a failure and feel bad about, he looked at as a success. I'm getting closer.
Or how about the child who loves ice cream? He sees it and thinks it's delicious, very yummy, and it's a good thing. But then he eats too much ice cream and his stomach starts to hurt. Now he sees ice cream as a bad thing. When a person liberates himself from the bonds of the desires of his heart and finds satisfaction in serving the Spirit within, he has attained to spiritual consciousness. His mind is no longer disturbed by adversity nor by prosperity. He accepts both. He is tied to neither. Anger, fear, and worry have been cast off as discarded garments. Realizing that Spirit rules it all, he has learned to accept and adapt himself to whatever the divine sends his way. With the power of his mind, he applies the law of transmutation of energy to the evil, and by comparing it to something more evil on the scale, he transmutes the evil into good.
The law of polarity, or the law of opposites, and the law of relativity influence your daily life, especially your relationships with others. Everything in the universe has its opposite poles. The law of polarity states that everything in the universe has its pair of opposites. All opposites are identical in nature and differ only in degree. Different degrees of the same thing. Hot and cold are both temperatures. Because of this law, the polarity of the atom was conceived. The north and south poles are nothing but opposite aspects, positive and negative, differing only in potential or direction. They're two extremes of the same thing, with many varying degrees between them. Therefore, there is no absolute cold or absolute heat, but cold and heat are really the same thing. The difference exists merely in variance of degrees of the same thing. Heat and cold simply indicate, in degrees, a form, a rate of frequency of vibration. Heat is one pole, cold the other, of the region in vibration known as temperature. There's no difference between light and darkness except in degree. You can't tell where light begins and darkness leaves off. Same is true of slow, fast, high, low, hard, soft, big, little, positive, negative. Law of polarity operates on all three planes: physical, mental, and spiritual.
Neither positive nor negative can exist alone. There would be no such thing as peace if there weren't war. There is always an equal and an opposite force with many varying degrees in between. Everything in the universe is subjected to the law of polarity. In the physical, mental, and spiritual life, it means that anything, thought, or act viewed as unrelated to anything else has two different aspects. These aspects are not apparent to the senses until one relates the thing, thought, or act to something else, using the law of relativity. Under polarity, these opposite aspects or extremes are called poles. Let's take a look at an apple using the law of relativity. If you took a bite of a lemon and then tasted the apple would appear to be sweet in relation to the lemon. Yet that same apple, if eaten after you taste honey, may appear as sour. It's the same with thought. A thought may be considered bad in its relation to oneself, but the same thought in relation to another person may be construed as being good. Acts come under the same principle. To kill another person in time of peace is considered bad. To kill that same person in time of war may be called good.
Studying law of polarity, you will note a similarity to law of relativity. Keep in mind, though, that a thing, thought, or act under law of relativity, in relation to other things, thoughts and acts, will have two different aspects. That is, good or bad, hot or cold, long or short, etc. These are known as opposites. Law of polarity differs in that each thing, thought, or act has two poles or extremes. Spirit, creator of all, does not deal with the opposites. Man coined words such as hot, cold, good, bad, rich, poor, love, hate, so that he was able to express in words how things, thoughts, and acts affect him. When one can see the universe with the eye of the divine, he sees all things as they are, in their essence, as being absolutely necessary in the scheme of things. But when one sees the universe with the eye of man, he sees the opposite aspect of things, thoughts, and acts, and in his ignorance is affected thereby. We live in a world of opposites and are affected by them until we fully understand them for what they are. When we understand the laws of the universe, the opposites can no longer affect us adversely, and we're able to live our lives with greater peace.
Average individuals tend to conclude that their problems, struggles, and sorrows are greater than those of their neighbor, and at times greater than any other person's. We must recognize that life is a battle, and through our trials, our suffering, our disappointments and sorrows, we are strengthened and able to grow spiritually. Anyone who is ill, has problems, and who despairs should heed the old saying, God's in his heaven, all's right with the world. That's from Thurman Fleet's Rays of the Dawn. And also, let's look at the lives of animals. If an animal has a place to sleep, food, and a mate, and is not affected by the physical things that he cannot avoid, he's in a state of peace and happiness. He knows nothing about the opposites. Being unable to reason, he is not conscious of the good and bad. Things are just things. It is true that the animal comes in contact with things that are detrimental to him, but he cannot reason upon them. His experience with such things causes him to avoid them. We can learn a great lesson by watching the animal. We too should avoid detrimental things. Man, with his reason, found certain things desirable and pleasant and reasoned that they were good. Things that affected him adversely he called bad. Other things were neither, and he called them neutral. Man tries to avoid the bad, but has never really been able to eliminate it. Man must live amidst the bad, and in the degree he fails to adapt himself to it, he lives in distress and suffering.
Story about a man who dropped a cigarette in a beautiful chair. He and his wife were eating dinner, and they suddenly smell smoke. And they rush into the living room to find the beautiful chair in flames. Right away the man throws the chair into the yard where it burns up completely. The couple bemoans their loss and the fact that this has happened to them. The chair was worth several $100s. Both were wondering why they had bad luck. A friend later stopped by who understood the law of polarity, and he asked them what had happened, and they told him about the chair. Well, the friend says, "You sure are lucky. Down the street near where I live, a neighbor left a cigarette on an ashtray near the sofa. He and his wife went out for a ride. Meanwhile, the cigarette dropped from the ashtray, the sofa caught fire, the house burned down. They lost everything, house, clothes, and all of their furniture. The loss of your chair looks pretty small."
Yeah. Let's practice putting these lessons to the test. Let's say you're worried about something. First, apply constructive thought to the problem to determine if it can be solved. If it's not in your power to solve the problem, refuse to worry about it. Apply law of relativity and law of polarity. The opposite of worry is hope. Knowing that source energy is in charge of the universe, knowing that he is all-powerful, hope that spirit, in his divine wisdom, will get the problem satisfactorily solved. This manner of reasoning will eliminate the problem for a person with understanding. You might continue reasoning and apply law of relativity, comparing your predicament to one of a more serious nature. Then your worry will appear as insignificant or not such a big deal. Constructive and destructive emotions are opposite aspects of the same thing, differing only in degree. Therefore, law of polarity, operating with the other laws we've learned, can, by supplying an abundance of positive energy, overcome the negative. Here are some examples. When you feel fear, replace it with faith, love instead of hate. Get rid of anger and practice patience. Sympathy versus criticism. Isn't it awesome to know that an abundance of the positive, constructive emotions will dilute, neutralize, and overcome the negative?
Even with a lot of knowledge, we're living among people who have no clue regarding the laws of the universe. You're surrounded. Each day we come into contact with people like this, and you're affected by their acts, especially those we call bad. How can we meet this situation? First of all, try to select your friends and acquaintances from among people who are living on the positive side of life, those who always do the right thing. Secondly, avoid people who are constantly involved in wrong action and negative vibrations. Now, one example is avoiding gossip. This can be difficult because gossip has become a very popular pastime, not just amongst friends. Look at the magazine covers while you're waiting in line at the store. Gossip is not only speaking negatively about someone, but any conversation of another's affairs. And maybe you've heard the expression, unevolved people talk about people. Semi-evolved talk about events, and evolved people talk about ideas. If you come in contact with people involved in wrong action and have business dealings with them, pay attention. Protect yourself. If they do something to affect you adversely, try not to let it upset you, knowing that there are human laws designed to protect you. There's also a spiritual law to keep in mind, the law of compensation, in addition to the law of cause and effect, which will take care of the situation. And that's a good thing to remember, to keep you from reacting. They'll get their just reward, and you don't have to do anything.
Nice. And if someone should, let's say, cheat or steal from you, the law of compensation will take care of the matter. Sooner or later, the law of compensation will take from the dishonest person 10 times as much as he has, through violation of the law, taken from you. And through the same medium, the law will return to you 10 times the amount of your loss. That will help keep you cool, calm, and collected. Also, keep from sending out negative vibes such as hate to the cheater by remembering that his wrong action is merely the negative expression of the great creative intelligence. With the opposites, there cannot be an honest man without the opposite, a crook, one at each end of the pole. So best to avoid the dishonest. Their dishonesty gives you a clue to the status of their evolution of their body, mind, and soul. If you yourself are having negative thoughts, what you want to do is to replace them. Begin to think good thoughts each day, as many as you can. And once you start thinking positive, you will attract more and more good thoughts. And eventually the good thoughts will wipe out the negative thoughts altogether. Thoughts are things. Focusing on a negative occurrence instead of sending good vibes to the person does not improve the situation. It adds to the negativity.
An example I'd like to share along those lines is when a loved one is not feeling well. Sending worry thoughts really doesn't improve their health. Now close your eyes and visualize them the way you want them to be, vibrant and healthy. Anything we try to get rid of, we're holding in our minds. Instead of seeing the problem, see only what you want. If you'd only see what you want, that is what you would get. If you want a positive, happy life, let go of the negative, replace it with the positive. When you understand and apply these laws, you will be better equipped to adapt yourself to your world. You will not allow the negative to affect you. Negative emotion is your indicator of resistance, while positive emotion is your indicator of allowance. And they're on the same meter: allowance, resistance, allowance, resistance.
Now let's take a look at the opposites of masculine and feminine in the law of gender. This law governs creation, although in reality nothing is ever created in the sense that something is made out of nothing. Everything is merely changing form. For example, your body will eventually transition perhaps into ash or fertilizer. All things are dual. Every action has its reaction, every cause its effect. Every male has the female principle, every female the male principle. In each there is a part of the other, with many varying degrees between the extremes: night to day, summer to winter, love and hate, faith and fear, right action, wrong action. In the body, the law operates as health or disease. In the mind, positive thought and negative thought. In spiritual realm, where it governs action, right and wrong. Understanding this and the other laws gives you the knowledge that when applied to restore health, will work what the world would call miracles.
Let's look at creation. Creation is a result of the action of the originative masculine upon the executive female, the product resulting after its period of incubation directly from the female element on the physical plane. Now, this equates to sex. Mentally, we have the conscious and the subconscious. The subconscious mind is the originative masculine, and the subconscious, the female executive. The conscious plants an idea into the subconscious, which proceeds to execute that idea. Knowing this, it's important that the conscious mind carefully chooses thoughts and ideas, because if they're injected into the subconscious, they will, in time, become your experience. And when you truly understand this, you'll begin to make a very conscious effort to only entertain thoughts that, if materialized, are what you want in your life. If you do the opposite and dwell on negative thoughts long enough for them to take root in your subconscious, you'll create an unhealthy mind and disappointing body or living environment.
Now there are lots of slogans to help you remember these principles, such as what you think about, you bring about. Think positively and dwell upon thoughts of faith, hope, and aspiration rather than the opposites, such as worry, fear, hate, vanity. What you sow is what you reap. So sow positive seeds and reap the constructive things of life. Just like when you plant tomatoes, your garden gives you tomatoes, not green beans. The outer world is a reflection of your inner world.
As Eckhart Tolle put it, emotional pain, which is also the main cause of physical pain and physical disease, resentment, jealousy, self-pity, hatred, guilt, anger, depression, and all the laws of the mind, even the slightest irritation, are all forms of pain. And every pleasure or emotional high contains within itself the seed of pain, its inseparable opposite, which will manifest in time. Anyone who's taken drugs or gets high knows that the high eventually turns into a low. The pleasure turns into some form of pain. Seen from a higher perspective, both the negative and the positive polarities are faces of the same coin.
Well, we've looked at the law of gender on a physical and mental level. In the spiritual phase of life, we have the soul as the originative factor and the spirit as the executive. The law of gender operates on the spiritual plane in the same manner as on the mental and the physical planes. The soul chooses and originates things, thoughts, and acts. The spirit within goes into action, and after a period of gestation, brings those ideas that originated with the soul into conscious manifestation. Life will be blessed or cursed, according to the law of gender, depending on the thoughts that you've chosen. Choosing the positive thoughts and using concentration and meditation will be a blessed and happy life. Like attracts like.
We create neural pathways in our brain. Due to our basic concepts, we often have a lot of negative ideas. This in turn creates a big ball of negative neural pathways. But the more you keep switching those thoughts to the positive, the bigger that ball of energy will become. Eventually, the positive ball will become bigger than the negative. When that happens, your brain will automatically choose positive thoughts over negative more often. Here's how one person explains the idea of creating new neural pathways. Her basic concepts have nothing to do with the story, but keep in mind she has some aging concepts that could use revamping. She tells of small triumphs. I learned how to do a backward crossover today in my ice skating class. What's a backward crossover? Skating backwards in an arc generated by picking up one foot and crossing it over the other foot. No big deal unless you're 42 and decided 3 months ago that you wanted to learn how to skate, and you are as terrified as I am of falling on your tush on that cold, hard ice. The old adage is that it's much harder to learn new things, especially those requiring physical skill, the older you get. This may be true, but it's really hard if you don't even try. And the older we get, the more reluctant we are to look stupid. And the less we're willing to take risks. I've been reading lately about the latest research in the brain, in brain neuroplasticity. What they found is that the brain continues to build new neural pathways throughout our whole lives as long as we require our brains to perform new functions, things such as learning a new language or a new motor skill. Every week I go to my ice skating class, and every week I get just a fraction better. What I learned last week, as difficult as it was then, is much easier this week. This must come from the brain creating stronger neural connections. And although children can pick things up faster, I've found that I'm learning as fast, if not faster, than most of the kids in the class because of my better ability to focus my attention. Focused attention also creates new neural pathways.
Now, in the spiritual realm, the law of gender governs action. The soul, having the power of conscious origination, is responsible for every act, be it good or bad. So what if you're making a conscious effort to keep your thoughts positive, as well as doing and saying what you consider the right things, but you're having a down day? Well, this is where the law of rhythm comes into play. There is rhythm throughout the universe: full moon, new moon, high tide, low tide. You have various positive emotions such as generosity, aspiration, kindness, sympathy, love. When the law of rhythm is operating in your mental realm positively, you indulge in positive states of mind and are at least to some degree in harmony with your source energy. At times like these, you enjoy peace, harmony, and contentment. Then the pendulum swings and you are switched over to the negative, becoming inclined to worry, fear, prejudice, hatred, and so forth. Understanding this law, you can, by an act of the will, express only the positive and know that this too shall pass. And by continuing with a positive attitude during these times, the downward swing of the pendulum will move more rapidly back to an upward position.
By knowing the laws of the universe and body, mind, soul, you can consciously choose to bring your life into harmony with the divine by obeying these laws. As we learned earlier, think, talk, and act whatever it is you want. If it's health you're looking for, think, talk, and act healthy. When you talk, you create your world. Choose right things, think right thoughts, perform right acts. Choose that which augments life. When it comes to situations in life, you have two choices: adapt or eliminate. If you can't eliminate, figure out how to adapt. If you don't, you become the victim of problems and difficulties. That results in things such as illness. And really, there are no victims, only volunteers. Understanding that all of life is one. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Dr. Fleet writes, "Through goodwill comes insight, and only he who has so conquered his personality that he has but one attitude of mind, that of goodwill toward all creatures, is possessed of divine insight and is capable of distinguishing the true from the false. The supremely good man is therefore the wise man, the divine man, the enlightened seer, the knower of the eternal. Where you find unbroken gentleness, enduring patience, sublime humility, graciousness of speech, self-control, self-forgetfulness, and deep and abounding sympathy, look there for the highest wisdom. Seek the company of such a one, for he has realized the divine. He lives with the eternal. He's become one with the infinite. Believe not him who is impatient, given to anger, boastful, who clings to pleasures and refuses to renounce his selfish gratifications, and who practices not goodwill and far-reaching compassion, for such a one has not wisdom. Vain is all his knowledge, and his works and words will perish, for they are built on foundations that are temporary, worldly, fleeting. Action of the soul must of necessity come under the two categories of good and bad, or right and wrong. Right action is that which assists the spirit in its work upon the earth."
Let go of the negative. Replace it with a positive if you want a positive, happy life.